Rebuilding is a staple here at FSC. You guys know we love to tear down teams, productive struggles, go after guys that are accumulating in value. We broke down some contending trade targets 2 days ago. You guys showed a lot of support on that video. But today we're going to be breaking down 5 trade targets, guys that you can go after if you are in a productive struggle or a rebuild. We broke down, position by position a couple months ago in January. We'll link those videos down below about the higher end assets. These guys are going to be more like low risk type of acquisitions, guys that you can truly buy low on that could potentially go up in value quite a bit. So if you enjoy this video at any point, as always, leave a like. If this is the first time you're checking us out, hit the subscribe button. Danny, how you doing?
Doing well. And yeah, the basis of last video would have been, guys at their current cost that gave you enough production value to try to win the championship. Because you're not trying to produce from a rebuilding perspective, we are solely focused on assets that can increase in value, that have a path to potentially being, next year's top 20 wide receiver, next year's top 12 quarterback. We'll get into some of the names in quite a bit, but just for frame of reference, don't worry about the production value of these guys more so than the potential value accrual they could see.
Yeah, exactly. So let's waste no time. Let's get right into it. All right, just in case you guys were curious, these guys are all still phenomenal buys that I'm going to outline right now. In Superflex formats, Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray, Deshaun Watson, those guys are great buys. Danny still thinks Trey Lance is. I'm not really on board with that. But wide receiver-wise, Drake London, Jerry Jeudy, Michael Pittman Jr., Jalen Waddle, some of these dudes, they're good buys right now, but we already talked about them late in January. All the same arguments would be rehashed all over again. So if you want to check out those videos, definitely go check them out. Rebuilding trade target rule number 1 is your best friend is draft picks, obviously, because as rebuilders, we're not looking for point production. So there's no real reason for you to go after players that are going to score a lot of points. And in fact, if you have your own first round pick, it actually benefits you to trade away productive players to tank your own first round pick, especially a year like this, where the crown jewel is a guy like Caleb Williams in Superflex leagues, or even in one quarterback leagues, the crown jewel is a guy like Marvin Harrison Jr. So it should go without saying, basically, that the number 1 buy of any rebuilder is always draft capital, whether it's, first round picks in 2024, first round picks in 2023, even first round picks in 2025, if you're allowed to trade for those, and also second rounders if you can. But trade target number 1 kind of follows the same relative mindset. Is rookie wide receivers right now are undervalued on the market, or at least the picks that will equal them in the actual rookie drafts. The wide receiver position, if you guys look at Keep Trade Cut right now, does not have any depth. There's realistically, from guys like Michael Pittman at like wide receiver 18 to guys like, Mike Evans and DeAndre Hopkins, like that's the sweet spot. Wide receiver like 15 to 45. But once you get outside those top 45 wide receivers, you're really taking shots on, Josh Palmer's and KJ Osborne's and Rondale Moore's in the 50s. And those guys are not overly productive, and they're not, guys that are great profiles to bet on for value accumulation as upside swings. So for us, and for me specifically, we were looking at the values at wide receivers, and the only ones that truly stood out to me were the guys that were rookies, aside from Jackson Smith and Jigba, who's wide receiver 13 on Keep Trade Cut. That's where I have him in my rankings. I think he's appropriately valued. And Quentin Johnson, who's wide receiver 34 on Keep Trade Cut, I have a wide receiver 32 in my rankings. People really are off on the values of rookie wide receivers right now. For reference, I have Jordan Addison right behind JSN. I realize I'm higher on Jordan Addison. I have him at wide receiver 14, but even if you're lower on him, I think he should be in the 20s at the very least. He's wide receiver 30 on Keep Trade Cut. I have Zay Flowers at wide receiver 30. He's wide receiver 37 on Keep Trade Cut. Josh Downs, I have at wide receiver 31. He's wide receiver 50 on Keep Trade Cut. Jalen Hyatt, wide receiver 46, who I'm not even that high on. He's wide receiver 51 on Keep Trade Cut. Even once you get outside those top options, to me, it's pretty crazy that people don't know how to value rookie wide receivers and know that they're going to accumulate in value no matter what. As soon as they get drafted highly in the NFL draft, people want youth. That's how we play Dynasty, especially in today's market where players are a lot sharper.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, we've seen it every single year, especially in the last few years, that these rookie wide receivers that are drafted high in the NFL draft are valued by their NFL teams. And recently, a tweet by Dynasty IM kind of confirms this, that there's been 17 wide receivers selected in the first round since 2020. 13 of them right now comprise of your top 30 overall Dynasty wide receivers. The guys who are projected to go in the first round this year, guys like Quentin Johnson, Jordan Addison, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Jalen Hyatt, Zay Flowers, maybe a guy like Josh Downs sneaks in. Look at the first rounders recently. Justin Jefferson, wide receiver 1 overall, according to Keep Trade Cut. Jamar Chase, wide receiver 2, CeeDee Lamb, wide receiver 3, Garrett Wilson, wide receiver 5, Jalen Waddle, wide receiver 6, all the way down to a guy that we're going to mention in this video, but Jahan Dotson at wide receiver 28. Realistically, if you're looking for a low risk, high reward potential ceiling play, these rookie wide receivers that you should be able to get from, the 106 to the 112 in this year's draft are going to be buys regardless. Because if we're looking at it, I would much rather spend, from an opportunity cost standpoint, a rookie first round pick right now to get one of these guys than I would having to wait a year and maybe select them, at the back end of the second of my startup draft. So if you're looking at value and you're looking at potential accumulation these guys could see, the best bang for your buck you can get right now are some of those rookie wide receivers, given the strength of the play of the position in the last few years.
Yeah, I think the perfect example is looking at guys like Jameson Williams, who didn't even play as rookies, like barely played, and he's still wide receiver 17 on Keep Trade Cut. And even if you don't think some of these guys are that great of prospects, even a guy like Jahan Dotson and Treylon Burks, who had, up and down rookie seasons. We'll talk about Jahan Dotson in a bit, but Jahan Dotson was not a highly regarded rookie wide receiver by a lot of people. We really liked him, but a lot of people were a little skeptical. He goes out, scores a couple touchdowns, and suddenly he's a top 30 wide receiver. These guys accumulate value very easily. Unless they're complete and utter face planners that produce nothing, they're not really going to go down a ton in value. And even once you get outside those top 6 options, like you said, that are expected to get good draft capital, we're hearing a lot of rumblings that guys like Jaden Reed, Marvin Mims, Jonathan Mingo, Cedric Tillman, Trey Palmer, some of these dudes that could go in the second round, could go in the third round of the actual NFL draft, these guys are ranked like in the 80s on Keep Trade Cut right now. And if they go in the second round of the NFL draft, I'll show you guys an example of the second round wide receivers from last year. Alec Pierce, Tyquan Thornton, Wan'Dale Robinson. These guys were not highly decorated prospects, but because they went in the second round, and some of them, even Jalen Tolberts and stuff that went in the third round, Alec Pierce went from wide receiver 100 pre-draft to wide receiver 56 just by being a second round pick. Tyquan Thornton went from wide receiver 155 to wide receiver 82 simply by the fact that he was a second round pick. Wan'Dale Robinson, wide receiver 88 to wide receiver 52. So it's pretty crazy that we can project that, these wide receivers are probably going to get decent draft capital and still value them extremely low. So for me, the buy here, if you want like an actionable piece of advice, is late first round picks to go after, your Addisons, your Zay Flowers, your Josh Downs types, and also, mid to late second round picks as well, because these guys, even if they're not hits, you're not a huge fan of Jonathan Mingo, Marvin Mims, these guys, they're going to have trade value on the open market because they're a reroll, right? You take a second round, caliber asset and you trade it for a mid to late second round pick. You reroll somebody like, I don't know, who's going for a late second rounder right now, Dalvin Cook, a guy that's over the hill or something. You reroll him into an upside profile, a rookie wide receiver. And even if you don't like that prospect is going to have more liquidity on the open market than a guy like Dalvin Cook would, because people understand that Dalvin Cook is a little bit over the hill right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're looking at a lot of these guys too. Realistically, like even the guys you mentioned who increased a ton in value, did any of them have, especially impressive rookie seasons? No. But the fact of the matter is they didn't face plant to the point where people are completely off of them. And they were so low regarded to the point where the threshold of them gaining value was very low. So if we're looking at it and applying it to this year's class, the expectation versus the reality after this year is you're not going to need a Garrett Wilson 1,100-yard season unless you want to, of course, hit the high ceiling apex of being a top 10 dynasty wide receiver. It's pretty easy to be a top 30 dynasty wide receiver after your rookie season, so long as you don't completely face plant. So if we're looking at some of these guys that, I mean, we'll get into Dotson in a second, but he didn't have like a crazy rookie season. Same thing with Treylon Burks. He's been hurt. Didn't really have much going on there. Still wide receiver 26 in Keep Trade Cut. You mentioned Jameson Williams as well. Wide receiver 17, and he played what? 4 games down the stretch, 5 games down the stretch last year and had like 2 targets a game. Like realistically, the threshold for meeting that production value is not as high as it used to be because people are more wary and more willing to buy on these younger guys ahead of the curve.
Yeah, exactly. And even some of the lower end prospects, Wan'Dale had a point in time where he was a top 35 wide receiver because he produced a couple good games during the season, and you could have sold him if you were a rebuilder and invested like a early third round rookie pick into him, and you could have sold him probably for at least a second rounder, if not potentially more. Same goes for a guy like Alec Pierce. He strung together a couple decent games. You could have sold him as a top 35, top 40 wide receiver in Dynasty. And that's kind of the point with these rookie wide receivers. They hold value, they're good liquidity pieces, and they're good guys to go out and buy if you're not looking for immediate production, especially because sometimes they can develop into great pieces for your team, or you can just cash out on them if you don't really believe in the prospect. We get, camp hype about Jonathan Mingo. He looks like the next AJ Brown or something because he wears number 1 and played for Ole Miss. And you sell him after a great preseason game for like 2-2s or something like that. That shit happens all the time. And I think it's a great investment, more so than investing in, Rondale Moore types, Josh Palmer types, guys that we kind of already know what they are. It's much better to take a reroll on these rookie wide receivers. So that is the main trade target of this video, these rookie wide receivers in the area of the draft that you can get them. Trade target number 2 is a guy that is a little bit more highly regarded, Brandon Aiyuk, who is wide receiver 21 in my rankings, wide receiver 24 on Keep Trade Cut. This guy's finished as like a top 36 wide receiver every season of his career in points per game. Top 18 as a rookie at 15.4 points per game. Has like a doghouse playing behind elite Deebo Samuel season in 2021 and still finishes as a wide receiver 3 in points per game. Then this year comes back with a top 24 wide receiver season at 13.4 points per game. The guy can just flat out play, right? And he's barely 25 years old. He's in a contract year. He could potentially stay in San Francisco long term if they extend him. Debo and Kittle are starting to get a little bit older. They've both dealt with injuries. Or he could be signed to a new team as the alpha wide receiver traded to a team midseason or something like that. I know this guy's a great player, which is why I'm comfortable investing in him if I'm a rebuilder or if I'm a contender regardless. If he gets an outlier season where, let's say, the San Francisco 49ers for once are not a bottom 10 team in pass attempts like they are every single year, 26th last year, 29th in 2021, he's going to get an upside case that he could be a wide receiver 1. If he goes into a season next year and the 49ers just, for whatever reason, outlier season, have the 13th most pass attempts in the league, and Deebo Samuel misses half the year, he has a wide receiver 1 ceiling in that offense, let alone if he were to be traded to like the New York Giants or something where he'd be the clear alpha of that team. So for me, he still has wide receiver 1 upside. He's still hella young. He just turned 25. I think he's primed for a monster season at some point in his career. He's kind of like the new DJ Moore, except he's had way more production than DJ Moore has ever had in his career.
Yeah, no, we've kind of seen so far that he is a very talented wide receiver, arguably, a top 20 level talent in the NFL. Just hasn't been able to showcase it to his maximum capacity. And like you said, the fact of the matter is he's still a high-end wide receiver 3, low-end wide receiver 2 in the situation he's currently in. But if he was ever to go, say he's traded to Kansas City, say he's traded to the New York Giants, say he's traded or signed somewhere else, some free agency once his deal's done, we're looking at a guy that has a legitimate 1,300-yard type of ceiling. So buying him now, you're retooling. Probably this year, he's not going to have, the apex of statistical value. But come 2024 season, come, at the latest 2025, again, like I said, I wouldn't be shocked for looking at a 1,300-yard caliber wide receiver. Like we saw, as much as we like AJ Brown, even in Tennessee, he didn't really have the ceiling that we fully expected his talent to showcase. He goes to Philly, and he's instantly a 1,500-yard, 10-plus touchdown, top 5 overall wide receiver on the season in fantasy. So although I don't think Aiyuk is the caliber of player that AJ Brown is, not many people in the entire league are, Brandon Aiyuk could have that level of value accrual if he lands in a spot to fully maximize his point production value.
Yeah, to me, it's crazy that DJ Moore has 2 wide receiver 2 finishes in 6 years, and Brandon Aiyuk has 2 in 3 years, and he's 2 years younger than him, and DJ Moore is valued higher on Keep Trade Cut right now. To me, it just doesn't make any sense. So, Brandon Aiyuk definitely, especially if you have a guy like DJ Moore, just go swap him 1 for 1. You get a younger guy who's been more productive and is more situation proof, as we've seen out of Brandon Aiyuk. So we already kind of teased this multiple times. Trade target number 3 of the video is Jahan Dotson, a guy who I absolutely loved. We both loved coming out of Penn State last year, wide receiver 26 in your rankings, wide receiver 29 on Keep Trade Cut. I have him at wide receiver 26 as well.
Yeah, and with Jahan Dotson, it's pretty funny to me because every, positive sign we could have seen, I mentioned before, he didn't have a crazy impressive overall rookie season, but when you truly break it down, you realize how impressive it actually was. He had 9 fully healthy games because in 3 of those games, he had 4 targets coming back from an extended 5-week absence following the Dallas Cowboys game. But in the 9 games that he was fully healthy, this is a guy who commanded 57 targets, which is over 6 targets per game. And in that time frame, averaged 14.4 PPR points per game. And although that is propped up by 7 touchdowns, is still very, very impressive for a rookie wide receiver. being able to step on the field, Terry McLaurin on your side, and produce beside a guy like Terry McLaurin. Not to mention, we're looking at this as a full offseason now to build rapport with Sam Howell, who you'll get into in a second, has a fresh face running the offense with Eric Bieniemy coming in from the Kansas City Chiefs on an offense that I think should continue to make strides. I think there's a real possibility that following this year, you're looking at Dotson having this 1,100-yard breakout year, being a consensus top 20 dynasty wide receiver. And again, if you're retooling and you're getting a player that entering their age 24 season has went from the wide receiver 29 to the wide receiver 20 in terms of keep trade cut value, I think that would be a huge bang for your buck. So overall, go get them now. I think personally, this Washington team is very, very underrated. A lot of people will, bash them. Oh, they're Washington. What are they going to do? But they have a pretty good roster. I wouldn't be shocked if this is the surprise playoff team of 2023. I wouldn't be shocked if they finished ahead of the New York Giants in terms of the rankings in the NFC East.
Yeah, I mean, he just checked a lot of boxes, right? Like we think of like Treylon Burks and Jameson Williams, who are these big projections, right? Like on a per route basis or a per game basis, they were doing this, that, and the other thing. There was no question marks with Jahan Dotson. He scored 20 points in fantasy his first game. He was on the field for every single route anytime he was healthy. There's no projection here. We saw him already produce. And he's still young. It was his rookie season. I think he had quite an impressive rookie season, similar to what we saw from a guy like even Calvin Ridley his rookie year, just scored touchdowns and was able to make plays. Wasn't necessarily a huge target earner, but that came with time. And I think the same thing will happen with Dotson because we know going back to his college days that he does know how to earn targets and he does know how to be a team's number one. So all the way on board with Jahan Dotson there. His teammate, Sam Howell, I also think is a great trade target because you mentioned the team's underrated. I think Sam Howell is one of the cheapest upside swings at quarterback that could potentially turn into a top 12 to 15 startup pick that I can find in fantasy right now. I'm not saying it's a likely outcome. He's quarterback 29 in my ranking, so I'm not going out of, this world crazy on him. Quarterback 33 right now on keep trade cut. He absolutely comes with risk. The Commanders could address the position in the draft. If Will Levis starts to slide or if Anthony Richardson starts to slide, I don't think they will personally. I think Rivera is coaching for his job, and I think he's comfortable having Sam Howell and Jacoby Brissett, duke it out in training camp and may the best man win. Set aside the fact that Sam Howell was my quarterback one in last year's class. So I obviously believe the guy is a talented player. Just think of the surrounding talent he's got to work with, man. Jahan Dotson, like you already talked about, Terry McLaurin, two solid running backs with Brian Robinson, Antonio Gibson. Maybe they even add some pieces to that backfield. Curtis Samuel as a great third wide receiver. They'll probably add a tight end at some point in the draft. Maybe even at 16, they take Michael Mayer, Dalton Kincaid, somebody like that, or a Luke Musgrave in the second or third round. Sam Howell can run too. That's the exciting part about why he could accumulate in value. He's a 22-year-old quarterback that has a Konami profile. He has a great surrounding cast, and he's never been this cheap. He also has a great offensive line in front of him. He rushed for over 1,000 yards his final year at UNC, joining the likes of Jalen Hurts, Malik Willis, Kyler Murray, Trey Lance, Deshaun Watson, and Lamar Jackson, who did it twice, as the only quarterback since 2010 who rushed for 1,000 yards in college. So we're talking about a guy that legitimately has at least Daniel Jones caliber rushing, if not higher. It's not guaranteed to work out by any means. Like I said, fifth-round quarterback, won't be committed long-term unless he really, really shows a ton this year. But bringing in Jacoby Brissett is a good thing. It's better than them bringing in a first-round rookie quarterback. It's better than them bringing in even a Jimmy Garoppolo or a Derek Carr who have a little bit more name cachet around the league. He could be a pain in the ass for Sam Howell because Jacoby Brissett's a pretty good quarterback. But if Howell takes the steps needed in training camp and OTAs, all that kind of stuff, then I think the coaching staff and the front office want him to work out, and he should have the inherent leg up that way. Like I said, the roster is talented. The team will be good if Sam Howell is. And if he has, let's say, a top 15 caliber fantasy season, he's probably their quarterback going into next year. And I think at least he ascends in value into like a top 20 dynasty quarterback.
What's the funny thing about Sam Howell, too, is people will look at these athletic profiles for quarterbacks right away and just assume, oh, yeah, he's going to be an elite rusher in the NFL. But it's actually been proven that it's way more about a quarterback's rushing tendencies than their raw relative athletic score. Because, for example, a guy like Justin Herbert has a higher relative athletic score than Josh Allen. But who runs the ball more in the NFL? Josh Allen. We saw Sam Howell this year after that very, very productive rushing season in college in his only lone start in the NFL. 5 carries, 35 yards, and a rushing touchdown. Again, it's only one game. It's only a one-game sample size. Can't really extrapolate that for a full year, but that just kind of goes to show you that in his first full game, last game of the year, playing a team that was a 12-win Dallas Cowboys team, had no fear, was able to take off and run, able to put up over 20 fantasy points in his first outing. And that just shows me good signs going forward, especially with Eric Bieniemy coming in, making it a more simplified offense for Sam Howell to grow and nurture in, along with those tertiary weapons on the outside. I wouldn't be shocked if we're looking at a guy who, like you kind of said, top 15, top 20 overall fantasy season this year on the back of potentially, 350, 400 plus rushing yards.
Yeah, exactly. The guy has tools, man. He was, in my opinion, like worth a second round pick in the NFL draft. He threw the hardest pass at the combine velocity wise. He threw a 59 or whatever the miles per hour was. It was 1 mile per hour lower than what Patrick Mahomes threw at the combine. The guy has a rocket arm. He can run. He's got the tools that we look for out of fantasy quarterbacks. The only thing that isn't there is the team investment. He went in the 5th round, and that's an unfortunate thing, but we've heard good things so far. They sound like he's going to have a real chance at the starting job. They only just signed Jacoby Brissett, who, even though he was a good quarterback last year, has been up and down throughout his career, and he's more of like a bridge journeyman type of quarterback. So to me, Sam Howell, at the point in the draft that you're getting him in the 11th, 12th, 13th round of Superflex startups. You can get him for, early 3rd rounders, late 2nd rounders in trades. I'm willing to take the shot on the guy that could potentially become a long-term QB3 for my rebuilding teams, long-term QB2 potentially, even for my rebuilding teams, and a guy that actually has real upside. And all it's going to take is Sam Howell starting week 1 and having 50 rushing yards and a touchdown for you to give you your first selling window as well.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree on Sam Howell. I absolutely agree on the fact that I think this Washington Commanders offense is going to be the most slept on unit coming into the year, but going to be the one that overperforms expectations the largest.
Yeah. So a couple honorable mentions that we weren't going to talk about. Again, everybody that we had in the other video, we're not going to really mention, but Drake London, Kyler Murray, Deshaun Watson, all still great buys in Dynasty right now. We thought we were going to have a tight end in this video. We're like, oh, I wonder, Chigo Kronkro, like some of these guys, they're already being valued quite highly. So if I were to say there's like a buy low tight end in fantasy and Dynasty right now, it'd probably be the rookie tight ends. I think Michael Mayer is going quite low in terms of rookie drafts. You can get him in the early 2nd round for the most part. Dalton Kincaid, kind of same thing. Even these later round tight ends, Sam Laporta, Luke Musgrave, Darnell Washington, Tucker Kraft, guys, you could probably get late 2nd, early 3rd of most of your rookie drafts. So again, this kind of goes back to our original point. Picks are usually what you want to have if you're a rebuilder. And I think taking shots at rookie tight ends this year is going to be probably a good idea because, we can only take stabs at the players that the NFL draft gives us every year. And they've given us a great tight end class this year. So you might as well take some shots on those guys. As far as wide receivers are concerned, like I said, rookie wide receivers in the few that we talked about. Running backs we're almost never investing in if we're a rebuilding team. No. So you're probably not shocked that we didn't talk about any running backs in this video. If you want to invest in some lower end, like Antonio Gibson's RB 40 and keep trade cut type of running backs, maybe, but even still, they're going to give you point production. I personally, on my rebuilding teams, I'm starting Kyle Juszczyks and guys like that. So,
CJ Ham, baby.
Exactly. We're stripping all running back production because we want Caleb Williams. We want, Marvin Harrison. We want the top guys in 2024. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, leave a like down below. Danny T's Dynasty IM. I talked about it in the last 2 days video. We are starting up a DEVY league with me, with Danny, with Ron Stewart, with Dynasty IM. That giveaway will be conducted tomorrow. So if you want a chance to be in that DEVY league with us, go and join over on flockfantasy.com. If you're a Flocker member, you get 1 entry. If you're a Mother Flocker member, you get 2 entries. And fill out the Google form link down below in the description and in the pinned comment to have a chance to be in that league with us. We're going to be doing this startup probably this weekend. So we're going to announce the winner for that on Friday. And of course, on Flock Fantasy, you'll get all of our rookie rankings, dynasty rankings. I'm going to be dropping a draft guide essentially next week where all my player cards, all my write-ups on all these prospects will be available for you guys in one PDF that you can download and get prepared for the NFL draft. During our NFL draft live stream, when players get picked, I'm probably going to pull up that draft guide and show the player card and be like, hey, this guy is a good fit. He's not a good fit, whatever the case is. So definitely stay tuned for all that stuff. Check out the DEVY League if you guys are interested. Like, comment, subscribe if you enjoyed. But with that being said, peace out, and we'll talk to you soon.